Nietzsche is a fascinating German philosopher from the 19th century. He's actually of very little significance in his own lifetime. He was born in 1844. He dies in 1900. And for the last 11 years of his life, he's insane. So he doesn't really write anything of any significance in the last 11 years of his life. He dies, I would say, unknown, but not considered to be particularly significant. And yet, in the over 100 years since Nietzsche's death, he has become arguably the most influential philosopher, particularly in humanities departments in higher education in the West. Nietzsche's brilliance lies in the fact that he blows the cover of the Enlightenment. In the Enlightenment, what you have is, God is marginalized or God is dispensed with, people like Kant and Hume, but a broad Christian morality remains in place. It no longer has a foundation, but Kant's a civilized human being. Hume's a civilized human being. What Nietzsche does in the latter part of the 19th century is effectively say this. He says, hang on a minute, you can't do this. You can't get rid of God and carry on as if God still exists. You can't get rid of God and not realize that everything built upon the idea of God is now up for question and has to be revised in some way. So, for example, we might say, take the example of stealing. If you were to ask Thomas Aquinas why stealing is wrong, Aquinas would say to you, well, it breaks the law of God. The world reflects God's character. Stealing is a contradiction of God's character. It's wrong. Nietzsche would say, no, once God is gone, you can't do that. Stealing could be right. Who says stealing wrong? I'll tell you who says stealing is wrong. The weak person. If the strong can steal, why shouldn't the strong steal? And don't resort to either to arguments based on God or arguments on things that were based on God. Face the full reality of the death of God and realize that the whole of morality needs to be revised and transformed. I think one of the things that Nietzsche does is he gives a theoretical justification for transgression. When you think of what is the archetypal hero of our day, it's the transgressor. That emerges in the 19th century with Dostoevsky. In Dostoevsky's novels, there's always redemption. But the interesting thing about Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment is he's a transgressor, and he makes that very Nietzschean argument. In his essay on crime, Raskolnikov lays out this argument where he says, the higher man is known by the fact that the normal rules don't apply. He breaks the normal rules. And that, of course, is what Raskolnikov does. He murders the moneylender in order to demonstrate his moral superiority to those who simply follow the rules. And that's become the default in modern culture, whether it's Clint Eastwood in a spaghetti western in the 1960s, whether it's Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, the Cormac McCarthy novel. The people that tend to stand as the intriguing, glamorous figures of our culture tend to be the transgressive ones. And there's no redemption today, no. Maybe their transgression is their redemption. In terms of broader responses through the ages to people like Rousseau and company, I think that Rousseau's thinking and the later thinking of people like Nietzsche percolated so slowly into society that we don't really get the kind of significant, pungent, comprehensive responses to them until it's basically too late culturally. We're starting to see these things coming out in the last 30, 40, 50 years. We didn't really see them. No Christians responding to Nietzsche in the 19th century because Nietzsche's not a force in the 19th century. I think as Christians we need to be very careful about nostalgia. Often we can look back to the past and we can cherry pick the bits we like. Many Christians might look back to the 1950s and say, well, that was great, Mum was at home preparing dinner and keeping the house tidy. Dad was out at work. Kids were sort of playing in the yard or going to school. Well, that's true if you live in the white middle-class suburbs. It's not true if you're a person of colour living down south, for example. So I think Christians need to be very careful about nostalgia. All ages are characterized by, we might say, distinctive virtues of the age and distinctive sins of the age. Our task today is to understand what are our strengths and what are our sins, and to live in accordance with the knowledge that we get from that kind of reflection. Nostalgia is pointless. You can't turn the clock back to before the smartphone, for example. You can only learn how to live virtuously in a world with the smartphone. One question I'm often asked is, is society going to self-destruct, or is it going to pull back from the brink? If you look back at history, we have examples of societies that do one or do the other. Next question, of course, is, well, how do you tell which is which? And the answer is, well, they do one or the other. Society could well self-destruct. I think the levels of pornography use, artificial intelligence, there's so many challenges coming so fast, it's going to be very hard for us to assimilate them or accommodate ourselves to them. On the other hand, there are some positive developments taking place. I think I'm not prepared to say that the transgender crisis is over yet, but I think the momentum is beginning to shift in a different direction, that we're beginning to see pushback now that one could not have predicted even 4 or 5 years ago. So I think there are signs of hope. As Christians, of course, we have the great hope that God is in control, and with God all things are possible. So as Christian, our task is to be good disciples in the communities in which the Lord has placed us, and to trust the Lord to do what is right. We know who wins. The church wins. Whether we will be around to see it, well, that's a different question.
You need a little fee in your life. You need a little me in your life. I want to see the sea in your eyes. You need to be free.